Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Ashley's webinar on better clothing and bedding because your textile choices impact your health. We're very lucky to have our eco-fashion pioneer, Marci Zaroff, joining us as well to lend her expertise. There will be a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so if you have any questions, feel free to send them in via the chat box. And the webinar will be up on Ashley's YouTube channel within the week if you want to check it out there as well. So, Ashley, let's pass it on to you.
Thank you. So this is such an exciting topic. The reason that it's exciting is it really pulls together. I get to come full circle. You know, my goal is to help understand all the different things that fuel our better health, and in doing so, there are a lot of those things that I know about and can advise on. And I always love learning from other experts and and understanding different pieces of it. But this is an area where intuitively I knew the impact that things that are touching my body, that I'm sleeping, that I'm spending a lot of time with, in or on or near my body, obviously have an impact on my health. And I also understood the global impact. I want other people who are producing my products to be healthy, and and sort of was aware of the environmental components on a small scale. But boy, it wasn't until I met Marci and started to dive into her work, and I'm so excited to share that today, that I really understood why it is so important that we get involved in better clothing and bedding, better textiles, because your textile choices do impact your health. And I would not be able to do this without the support of my sponsors. So just want to make sure that I give a shout out: Manitoba Harvest, Natural Vitality, True Brock, Earthbound Farm Organic, Nature's Path Organic. Some of what I love most about these companies is obviously their commitment to producing products that the food supports better health, and the communities that they're working in are supporting better health. But one of the things that I've also, getting to know the individuals involved with these companies, is that they're as interested in this topic, whether it's the packaging that they're using or whether it's the clothing and textiles that they're engaging in from a work standpoint or a personal standpoint. So we're about to move into a very exciting space that's going to bring it all together for us. So let's get started. Always like to have an agenda. So today we want to focus on and remind ourselves what we all want. I want to talk about how we can get it. And then I'm going to bring Marci in, and we're going to talk about the problem, the solution, her work, and then also making sure that you get resources. That's so critical, and then leaving time for question and answer. So we'll move in quickly. So just a reminder, we know what we all want. We want better health. If we don't have it, we want to get it. If we have it, we want to keep it. And a reminder again that what better health is what goes in and on you. And I always like to emphasize it's what goes in and on you most often. And we're going to understand that as we move more into trying to figure out how we select, where we should focus, especially in this. Now I'm adding something else to you. I'm not just talking about your food. I'm not just talking about your supplements. I'm not talking about your beauty care. Now I'm adding your clothes, your linens, etc. So where should you focus? But the reason that it's so important to focus on what goes in and on you from a better health standpoint is what you put in and on you will enable your better health, or it will deduct from your health. It's super simple. And so we all want to be on the pathway to enabling better health. And so it really does come down to the choices, and the choices that we make more often. So better health is a component of better nutrition. We talk about that. We've talked about better soil in other webinars, and how important it is to make sure that we're nurturing our soil, because we cannot put nutrients into our body if the nutrients are not in the foods, whether it's the herbs or the plants and the herbs that the animals are eating, and then we're eating the animals or the animal products. It all comes down to maintaining better soil. And one of the things that impacts better soil, as we've talked about, is also the soil's ability to not just maintain those nutrients, but also be devoid of things that irritate and disrupt our body's normal functions. So it really comes down to having better resources available, and that leads us to the conversation today, which is really about what are better textiles. And there is no better person to talk to than the person who actually coined the term eco-fashion. So we are going to get into that part very quickly, because it's really important for us to understand in this whole eco-sustainability space what is and isn't eco-fashion. We want to be weary of what we'll call the greenwashing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But, you know, on my own personal journey from better nutrition to better health, one of the things I started to look at was, you know, just be really frank about it. I mean, I think the first place that I changed, not just from a food standpoint, but when I started to look at things that go in and on my body, was my deodorant. That was actually, it made total sense to me that when I apply my deodorant, I did not want to have chemicals going right into my body that could be harmful for me. And you know, our armpits are really close to our breast tissue, and as a woman, I was really concerned about that part. And so I switched my deodorant like in a snap. And certainly it took me a bit, and we've talked about that at Better Beauty, and we're going to talk about that with Better Textiles and Fashion. It took me a bit to find out not just what was devoid of the bad for me nutrients, but also what actually worked and what I enjoyed using, right? So that's the what we'll call the fashionable part of deodorant. But you know, then I started thinking about, well, gosh, you know, I work out 5, 6 days a week. I'm in a sports bra, and when I'm not in a sports bra, I'm in a regular bra, and then I'm wearing a night shirt. And then if I, you know, what my towels? I'm showering each day, and my linens. So I really started to get interested in how to make choices there. And as I set out on that path, I actually had no idea how difficult it would be to understand the world of better textiles and make some choices. So enter my fabulous, fabulous friend, Marci Zaroff. Marci, I like to say you are to fashion what your mentor, Horst Rechelbacher, is to healthy hair, skin, and environment. And for those that don't know, Horst founded Aveda, and later after selling it and wanting to do even more eco-beauty enabling, as we talked about in our podcast with you, he created Intelligent Nutrients, which is one of the just groundbreaking, better ingredient beauty skincare products. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, but that company is still run by his daughter and wife. And Marci, I think where I want to begin with you in this whole world of eco-fashion, explaining it, said you really like your passion was ignited. I like to say that you identified in the fashion space after having been in nutrition and understanding that whole piece, that you did not want to make a compromise between, you know, looking good and feeling good for yourself, but also what was better for you shouldn't be a compromise with what's better for them. And when I use the term them, I mean anyone who's involved in any aspect of producing textiles and creating fashion, as well as the environment on that part. So I would love to have you jump in, and if you can share a little bit of, you know, tell me the story of how you came to define eco-fashion.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley, and it's great to be here with you. So, you know, my background, which is so fun to be connected to you here, is that my first business, which is known today as the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, I started that as, you know, kind of a passion project because I was living the lifestyle of conscious eating and wanted to inspire and ignite other people to do the same, and I was getting asked a lot of questions. And anyway, that segued where I did partner up with Horst 25 plus years ago to connect food and beauty because of the lifestyle evolution and consumers saying, you know, I care about what I'm putting in my body, what's next, right? And so what I discovered was that through my work in food and then ultimately beauty, that there was this sort of, you know, seed getting planted that was growing, and there was a missing link in that whole wellness equation, and the link was really fiber and fashion. And so you know, people ask me, what's your background in fashion? And I, you know, can joke that I got best dressed in high school. So, you know, obviously that's huge credibility. And, I just always had a passion for fashion. And so, you know, kind of in the spirit of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, evolving from food into sort of what's our next, you know, basic need as human beings. I mean, shelter, which includes, you know, our home and our textiles. What are we putting on and around our bodies, not just what we're putting in our bodies. So recognizing that I loved fashion and that, you know, there's so much cachet in fashion, I started to believe that fashion actually could be the most powerful vehicle in the world for transformation. And so against everybody's advice telling me I was crazy, I coined the term eco-fashion in 1995 with the, you know, mission to revolutionize the fashion industry through education and inspiration and collaboration, connecting the dots, and innovation, because we have to turn the whole fashion industry really right side up. I would say upside down, but really right side up. And so in the early years, it was kind of schizophrenia. People, would tell me, like, no one who's into the environment and, ecology and ecosystems and humanitarianism and consciousness would ever care about fashion. And likewise, people in the fashion industry, look at that other sector as, kind of tree hugging and unfashionable. So it was kind of fun going from Natural Products Expo to Magic, where I had one group of people telling me they've got my back, and the other group of people telling me to watch my back. So it's been a 20-plus year journey and very exciting now, but I always knew this time would come. I founded Under the Canopy in 1996. It was the first sustainable lifestyle brand that really connected the dots, and we did all our photo shoots. We were direct-to-consumer mail-order catalog, mailed millions of catalogs a year. All our photo shoots were at farmers markets, at Whole Foods, reading books on nutrition in Barnes and Noble. I mean, we very carefully connected that lifestyle with food and beauty. And the brand launched its first 2 wholesale customers after going direct-to-consumer were Whole Foods and Aveda. We spearheaded the launch. I wrote the plan for Whole Foods to get into textiles, connecting from food to fiber, and we opened a 2,000 square foot Under the Canopy store-in-store at Whole Foods' first mega store. And then likewise worked with Horst to take the beauty concept to the next level, and Under the Canopy created eye masks and headbands and robes and all kinds of textile products, cosmetic bags for Aveda worldwide. We were in every Aveda in the world and every Whole Foods in the country and ultimately in the world when they opened in London and Canada. So that was kind of my foray, where we did women's, men's, baby, home, and growing, and always wanting to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of what was going on to inspire and activate people. When you start to see the farm to table movement, and people now in the new generation, which I'm sure we'll talk about, really very focused on transparency and the source. My next venture has been a work in progress for almost 4 years and is just now really coming into the market, and that's the first factory in the United States that's producing turnkey organic and sustainable apparel, kind of plug and play sustainable fashion. So we'll talk more about that later. But so, this is the world of that you're seeing. The last piece that just to shout out is Beyond Brands, which is my business with my husband, where we're helping sustainable fashion brands get more sustainable with their products. And we're also helping other sectors. But it just reiterates that it's about lifestyle, and all of these worlds are interconnected.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. So a lot of this is intuitive. I love this slide. A lot of this is intuitive, but when we think about the problem of fashion, I mean, I was just sharing this morning with someone that we were going to be doing this webinar, and she said to me, she's like, okay, but really, like, how is it that fashion, can be this, there's so many things that we need to worry about from an environmental standpoint. Like, we were at this event for oceans last night, and we were talking about coal, and obviously the energy sector is a big topic right now. And I said, when you start to understand, and I think some of these pictures that we see here with like the different colors of the water, I mean, in a way it looks extremely pretty until you realize that these waters are dyed. And so let's start to go through the scope of the problem and understand why this is such an important issue to be taking on from an environmental standpoint. And obviously we know collectively the integral link between environmental health and individual human health, as well as animal health. So take it a step back, and where does fashion rank in the world of pollution or environmental problem?
Yeah, so fashion is actually the largest polluter in the world, second to coal. So this is an astronomical issue, and which was another reason that I segued into fashion from food and beauty. There are just a magnitude and multitude of impacts, which we'll get to a little bit more in detail. But when you look at these rivers, to your point, and these bodies of water, you know, they say that you can tell what colors the factories are dyeing by the colors of the rivers in China. And it's just not a joke. I mean, it's crazy. And I mean, I've been to Hong Kong several times where, you know, I have one moment in time that I, you know, was on the beach with a girlfriend of mine and had just come from Oregon where there were, you know, millions and billions of stars in the sky and a gorgeous night. And here we are in Hong Kong on the beach. And she looked up and said, "Wow, what a gorgeous night, Marci. There's so many stars out." And I looked up and saw like 2 or 3 stars, and I was like, okay, guess everything's relative. And she said, well, you know, the only reason there's so many stars out tonight is because the textile factories were closed today.
Oh my
I was like,
God.
whoa, you know. So here's just, you know, some of the short list of really staggering and overwhelming facts. 20% of freshwater pollution in the world is coming from textile treatment and dyeing. And over 3 trillion gallons of fresh water are used to produce fabric. 10% of the world's carbon impact is coming out of the textile industry. 5% of our landfill space is textile waste. It's pretty crazy, you know, and we need to be thinking about you know, creating a different kind of model in fashion, because the faster fashion has gotten, the more waste there is, the more these impacts are increasing, the more energy we're using, the more water we're using. It's just not sustainable. It's crazy. And so, you know, you look at the aesthetic piece of this, right? Like, what's held back the fashion industry from embracing more sustainable manufacturing and materials, and really it's been the stigma. So when I started, I wasn't even at ground zero, I was underground, because the stigmas were that, first of all, that you had to give up style or quality or fit or color or comfort or hand or any of the things that a consumer's looking for when they buy fashion. Similar to when you're buying food, you want it to taste good, right? And so that's kind of one of your first and foremost deciding factors. So, you know, in rolling my sleeves up and getting into the trenches on this, it was clear that you don't have to give up those things. You don't have to be crunchy, frumpy, boxy, boring, beige, hippy dippy to be eco-fashion, to, you know, create eco-fashion. That's just a myth. Second myth is that you have to pay a lot more. And I would say this, that the typical garment supply chain is completely inefficient, and oftentimes a garment can change hands 7 to 10 times in a supply chain till it gets to that, you know, shelf. And, you know, when brands and retailers are purchasing, they're buying full package at a factory. But in our case, we go to the source, right? In sustainable fashion, we're looking at materials, and we want to make material change happen. So, you know, certification is so paramount, because in order to create a new model in the supply chain, we have to assure the consumer that there's transparency and that there's traceability and accountability, so that we can avoid greenwashing and we can avoid the things where people want to jump on the bandwagon of eco-fashion, because it's now becoming very cool to be into sustainable, organic eco-fashion, right? Which, yay, we've arrived. But with that, we have to be very mindful about knowing what to look for. So the #1 seal to look for in an organic fiber and textile product is the Global Organic Textile Standard. This seal assures from farm all the way to finished fashion that we are using certified organic fibers. We are using low impact that are free of formaldehyde, heavy metals, acetones, chlorine bleaches. It is not just about the fiber itself. It is about the finished textile. So when you see that seal on a bedding product or an apparel product, it means that all the way through its entire supply chain, anybody who touched that product in the manufacturing or the growing of the materials and the fibers is certified to the GOTS standard. And then the finished product itself was certified. So that is your...
I just want to jump in and ask a question. Yeah, in that space. So, and first of all, thank you for saying that about GOTS, which we'll be referring to it as, but it's the Global Organic Textile Standard, which actually Marci was instrumental in implementing and creating. And one of the things that I learned, so on my path towards trying to, and I see this all the time right now when I go into stores and say, oh, I'm looking for organic underclothes, or I'm looking for organic fabric. And so mistakenly, I thought that I would see this logo, right? Because I've come to just say, I have total trust in the organic logo. I'm not so sure what fair trade sewing means. I don't even know to look for, global recycle standard, et cetera. So let me just start with looking at for USDA organic. And I wasn't finding it, but I would see organic ingredients, like organic, made with organic cotton, or something like that, on some of the clothing, or on some of the linens, and I was struggling to understand it. So take a moment and just explain. It's been so helpful for me to understand from you why you created the GOTS and what that means. Why we won't necessarily see the USDA organic logo on the back of a T-shirt, or on the tag of a T-shirt.
Yeah, so I am on the board of, proudly on the board of the Organic Trade Association, which we do a lot of policy, and we do a huge amount of promotion and education, consumers and media, and are the trade organization for the organic industry. And what I discovered very, very early on, and actually going back into the 90s, since I've been involved in this organization from its inception, was that this seal really, which is governed by the USDA, the National Organic Program, was written in a very food-centric way. So all of the allowances are really food-based products. And so in the fashion and textile industry, we have a whole different set of, ingredients that are needed in order to create that finished garment or textile. And so we were in trying to create a seal that would mirror the organic food seal, essentially, or the organic National Organic Program seal. We wanted to take into account first and foremost, of course, at the agricultural level, everything has to be certified to that NOP seal, right? To the organic, all the same methodologies. So if you're actually marketing cotton balls, you can use the USDA organic seal. But when we start to get into a textile, we had to look at all the finishes and dyes and everything else that goes into the production. And so the Global Organic Textile Standard was an incredible collaboration. It started here. A small group of us in the U.S. in the 90s wrote the Organic Fiber Textile Standard for the U.S. We soon discovered that with textiles crossing borders and boundaries every day all over the world, it just was a complete mess, because the Soil Association in the UK had a separate fiber seal and standard, and so did the Japanese trade organization, and so did the German one. So we all came together and we created the Global Organic Textile Standard as a global collaboration that has now been adopted all over the world as the organic fiber finished product standard. So there's consistency and cohesiveness, and the USDA has officially embraced and adopted the Global Organic Textile Standard as their counterpart to the USDA food seal. And so we're super excited about this. And why you haven't seen it yet is this has been many years in the making. It took 6 years just to get the first seal and standard out, and at that global level, and now we're finally on our way, and you're going to start to see this more and more. So ask for it, look for it, and we've got a lot of things in the pipeline in regards to education and awareness about GOTS.
It's incredible. I mean, the leadership on that, I think I hope that this is a case study for other industries, and I understand that some are a little bit more complicated. For example, with dietary supplements, there's an overlapping with quote unquote food, right, in that space, and then, with beauty, et cetera. But I just think that this is so incredibly helpful. So I'm excited definitely to be checking that out. Okay, so continuing to move forward on that then, and you mentioned that, you're looking at, and I love these statistics across the midsection of this slide, being able to start to see GOTS and your facility right near me in Virginia, which I was able to visit, to understand that it really is about so much more. But there are, the reason I think that you're able to be doing this, and you alluded to this in the introduction, and I do want to talk about that, is we're no longer at a place where the majority of people feel, are comfortable buying their clothing and then finding out, okay, it's not just about harmful, is there potential harm to myself, but what does it mean for others? So I'd love to start to go through what are some of the drivers of eco-fashion, because I think that people who are listening have asked the same questions, whether it relates to, how are people being treated when they're growing my sugar, or how are people being treated when they're making my iPhone or my cars. So let's talk a little bit about that as it relates to fashion.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about lifestyle, and just to, share, statistically, over 84% of American consumers today are actually buying organic food, at least occasionally. When you have Costco as the largest buyer in the U.S. of organic food, this is no longer a little niche market anymore, right? It's moved on, and it's penetrated mainstream. So there's a natural awakening in lifestyle and that question of not just where's my food coming from, but who made my clothes? Where are they being made? How are they being made? And that transparency attribute as part of a core buying decision where people are voting with their dollars now, right, is hugely important. Next, you have a whole new generation that's come to life. I mean, this is the first digital generation in history. 80 million consumers with close to $2 trillion worth of purchasing power who've been raised where they can pull the curtain back on anything they want and ask those questions. And so, we have this huge opportunity to connect source with story now. And as people are learning that fashion is so destructive and polluting and exploitative, that, wow, like, wait, are there options? Are there choices? And so we are now, accessibility is the next frontier. We're really driving this into retailers across every channel of fashion, from your high-end brands like Stella McCartney, really to your mass market retailers and brands like H&M. They have a conscious collection, and a lot of other retailers and brands in between that we can speak to, a little bit later. But this is, the yoga movement. It's like yoga off the mat now, right? And, alternative health is no longer alternative, really. And, so there's the Fashion Revolution Day movement. There is so many efforts out there that are waking people up, and this cross-industry. I mean, look, as a factory with MetaWear, we're producing T-shirts for marketing campaigns and giveaways for brands and companies in the green business world that have nothing to do with fashion, but everybody touches T-shirts in some way. So there is that interconnection in categories where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts here. And as we join forces, 1 + 1 = 11, because we can tell our stories together. And so you can see with this one statistic that 77% of the population actually, when polled, will say they would buy eco-friendly fashion if it was available. And why there isn't more sales is because of that lack of accessibility. So it's a huge opportunity. We are, relatively speaking, at our infancy as an industry, eco-fashion. But I can tell you from my own personal experience, as I get propelled forward, and it's a little be careful what you wish for, but we are coming, and coming strong. This movement is not going away. We're at our tipping point. It's only going to get bigger.
So one in particular, if we isolate, because there are so many factors. I mean, this has to do with human rights. It has to do with environmental. We've talked about so many different pieces. But one of the ones, if I bring it a bit into the food, as well as really to make it localized here in the United States, to understand what has changed and what has the potential to change if we start making organic choices and looking for GOTS certified products, is really in the world of cotton. And so I wanted to talk about that because I think the story of the potential for change, the change that's already happening, and the potential for change, especially for an ingredient that doesn't necessarily have the best history in the U.S. So I think it's so important to look at this. So let's walk through cotton.
Yeah, so you can see from this graph, in 2002, there was about 245 million in sales in global organic textile sales. And today it's about 16 billion, right? So why this is so important. So what people don't realize is that, first of all, 60% of a cotton plant goes into the food stream. It is used for dairy feed, right? So if you eat organic dairy, you would want organic cottonseed in the feed, right? Because otherwise it's rampant with chemicals. Also, bread products and snack products use organic cotton or cottonseed oil. So if you want organic bread and snack products, you want organic cottonseed oil. So cotton is actually the most heavily sprayed industry in agriculture, and it's less than 3% of the world's agriculture, but uses up to 25% of the most harmful insecticides and up to 10% of the most carcinogenic pesticides. So when you get that kind of marketing, buzz in your mind that says cotton is a natural fiber, if you really pull the curtain back on cotton and you look at the magnitude and multitude of sprays, toxic sprays going into cotton and actually, affecting the ecosystem, right? On top of that, the cotton, when it's actually harvested, is often and usually chlorine bleached. And then as it's processed and finished along the supply chain, that's where you start to see the addition of other toxic chemicals and harmful chemicals like formaldehyde and PVC and even all the dyes that are very that have the high lead, and it's very disconcerting that you put this on your skin thinking it's a natural fiber with our t-shirts, our jeans, our bed sheets, our towels, our robes. I mean, think of how much cotton people are wearing and using, and you just not really thinking about, wow, as asthma rates and allergy rates start to increase, hey, what is that connection with the fact that we're wearing 24 hours a day practically, we're wearing textiles? And again, it goes back to, it's not just what we put in our body, it's what we put on our body when you learn about all the chemicals. And then there is the social ramifications, right? What people don't also realize is that, our clothing isn't growing in the department store, and people's lives are being affected who are growing and sewing these products. So, in the fields, not only do you see women in conventional cotton fields in third world countries, they're out there spraying with pesticide tanks on their backs, and oftentimes babies in slings, in their fronts. You see, health conditions just perpetuating and proliferating, and respiratory conditions from all these sprays. And what's happening is these farmers are getting stuck on what we call the pesticide treadmill, where they're getting lured in by the seed companies that are telling them they're going to increase their yields, and at the end of the day, the bugs build resistance, and the farmers have to get heavier doses of these pesticides, which they can't afford. And when they reach out to figure out how to do this, the banks partnered with the seed companies are funding them. And so what's happening is they're getting financed by those who are providing them with this sort of drug that's getting them stuck, and that keeps upping the ante. And at the end of the day, what's happening is they're destroying the ecosystems of their soil. The bugs are, continue to build resistance. The plants are getting weaker, and the farmers are going into despair. And you can, Google this. Every half an hour in India, a conventional cotton farmer is actually committing suicide by drinking pesticides. So, this is a social and an environmental issue, and that's why organic cotton is so important to me. We have to connect food and fiber, and because they're interconnected in agriculture and all rotated together, which is the foundation of organic agriculture. And why this photo I love, because this is my supply chain in Turkey, and in Turkey, they've never allowed for GMO seeds in agriculture, which is like, I love that, because that gives me such assurance that, we're not dealing with drift, which is, essentially polluting our farmlands, and we can have that full, farm to finish fashion supply chain. Turkey grows amazing organic cotton, as does India, and we'd love to see more of that in the U.S. It's just, the U.S. used to be the largest grower in the world of organic cotton, but when all the manufacturing went offshore to Asia and, into India, it really just unraveled the organic cotton movement here. We have, kind of last man standing, the Texas Organic Marketing Co-op, and they're actually getting honored at the Organic Awards next week in Baltimore for Farmer of the Year. And kudos to them because, without manufacturing in the U.S., you don't have that verticality. And so that's why I founded MetaWare, to really bring manufacturing back to the U.S. and to help reignite the organic cotton movement in our own backyard. Over 90% of the farmers and cotton farmers in the United States are growing, with GMO seeds and using pesticides and using herbicides that contain glyphosate, Roundup, and that's our agriculture, not too far away, right? Even if you live in the big city, and so we'd like to, recreate this sort of full farm to fashion model here in the United States. And just like we're seeing in organic food production and organic agriculture on the food side in the United States, we need to help the struggling cotton farmers in the U.S. on their livelihoods as well. So under the canopy was, my brand I mentioned, and you can see here it's all about no compromise. It's conscious without compromise. I mean, we've got certified fashion and got certified bedding, and and we've mastered those, breaking those stigmas with color and style and price. So our product is affordable, it's authentic, it's traceable. We sell at Macy's, at Bed Bath & Beyond, at online. We launched, as I mentioned earlier, the first ever effort in connecting food and fiber at Whole Foods. This was our store-in-store, our first launch, and we ultimately moved into all their stores, and we launched the first organic baby program for Macy's, because people, wake up oftentimes and start thinking about, what they're putting on their baby's skin, right? And their baby's like sucking on the sleeves of their shirts or on their baby blankets. You don't want your baby absorbing, eating all these chemicals in cotton. And so it's really, about not why would you buy organic, it's why wouldn't you buy organic cotton? I mean, if it's affordable and authentic and accessible and wearable and fun and has color and what you're looking for in terms of modern design, then we really need to shift this paradigm. And so I think now it's really about people knowing where to buy and how to buy.
And I think along that lines, I mean, I'm on a page, ripped from the headlines, right, from Instagrams and from, sort of the daily and weekly magazines. I mean, we are seeing celebrity adoption, which I think, when you have clothes literally thrown at you and donated, and people begging you to wear, I think it's incredible to see that, part of what is driving the trend is the adoption that we're seeing from the celebrity side, and the fact that it, can look amazing. And I think that that's a key piece. I mean, so many of the components of what you're talking about are that intersection, again, of personal health and environmental health, and knowing that we are at a place in the life of our earth, and certainly in the life of our country, where we know we have challenges with resources. So I'd love for you to walk through a little bit with MetaWare. I think you asked some really great questions here, and answer some questions about resources. So I'd love you to take us through this slide.
Yeah, sure. So, the core kind of buckets of impact in the fashion industry are water, waste, energy, chemicals, and the social justice component. And so in the vision for MetaWare, it was really how do we create a turnkey solution and be a solution provider to take the roadblocks away and the fear away from all the complexities of navigating supply chains and minimizing those impacts, and at the same time bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., right? So we created, in partnership with the Textile Exchange, and leverage their LCA study to create measurable data on every t-shirt that's made at MetaWare. You can actually know what the savings are in water and in energy and in pesticide use, and even with climate change. I mean, we know that that organic agriculture as a solution to climate change because the carbon is getting sequestered into the soil. Well, similarly with organic cotton, right? So we want to look at how do we reduce climate change, not just by reducing energy use, but using organic versus conventional cotton materials. And so, you know, from our cut and sew operation, where we're bringing in certified organic fabric that is, you know, made from GOTS certified yarns, all the way through to our screen printing, our garment dyeing, our tie dyeing, our embroidery, every single part of our supply chain under our roof is GOTS certified. So we are the only GOTS certified producer in North America that can make turnkey organic apparel. And we do stock fabrics, and we stock even a couple of styles of t-shirts so we can do quick turns for companies looking for their own prints. We also are the only fully cradle-to-cradle certified garment manufacturer in the world right now that we can make turnkey cradle-to-cradle printed certified cradle-to-cradle product. And what cradle-to-cradle is measuring is material health, material reuse, right? We got to look at that, closing the loop, right? It's also renewable energy, and we, as you can see from this photo, we have solar that is heating all of our water in the factory. Water stewardship, so we are very conscious about our water and our systems in the factory, as well as, like I said, we're heating the water with solar, and then social justice, where we have a number of great social programs, including a work release program with a local jail, tapping in to help underserved communities to build our sewing workforce as well. So, you know, it's plug and play intel inside of sustainable fashion, and we're working with amazing brand partners, many of whom are your sponsors, from Earthbound Farms to Nature's Path, and on the food and side all the way through to the fashion world. We've got lots of partners. And this you can see, you know, when you talk about celebrities. So if you saw in that last photo of MetaWear, I had Alicia Reiner as one of our ambassadors at MetaWear. She ended Under the Canopy. She is on Orange is the New Black. She actually just launched her first major film called Equity that she created and stars in theaters nationwide right now, and it's great. So I, you know, recommend going to see it. And then likewise, you have a lot of other celebrities engaging around this movement. They get it. They're living the lifestyle. And so Susie Cameron and Jim Cameron, Jim, of course, from Avatar and Titanic. Susie created something called Red Carpet Green Dress, where she's dressing celebrities on the red carpet at the Academy Awards with, you know, eco-fashion, so that when those interviewers are saying, hey, what are you wearing? There's a much bigger story than a brand name, right? And similarly, Livia Firth, Colin Firth's wife, started the Green Carpet Challenge. She's doing the same thing. So it's really starting that conversation, you know, on the red carpets to create that cachet and that excitement, leveraging celebrities to tell the story of eco-fashion and why it's so important. And just recently, there was a fashion summit in Copenhagen with 1,250 people, major brands, major media. I mean, Vanessa Friedman from the New York Times and major fashion brands and all the big retailers all coming together in, you know, to have that conversation about, okay, time to change the fashion industry. Business as usual is not okay. This industry is not sustainable. It's actually destroying our planet and human health.
So it's like so amazing to see, and I just wanted to, as we move into Q&A, I see that we've got a couple of questions, so I want to make sure we have time for them. But I do think that, you know, it's so important to just go through. We've got a couple of slides to see that you are, you know, as we've talked about, this is the tipping point, because these stories, everything that's in the news, this is this issue that, you know, sustainable fashion, eco-fashion is connected to. And I'm curious, is Fashion Revolution Day is that something that continues on a annual basis?
Yeah, so you can go, anyone can go to fashionrevolution.org. Fashion Revolution Day was born as a result of the 1,133 garment workers in Bangladesh that lost their lives in a single moment when the Rana Plaza factory collapsed, and that created such a global uproar that 60 countries around the world, consumers catalyzed to start to create that momentum, that noise, the demands that we need a fashion revolution. And so every year on April 24th is a day for us to really celebrate these people's lives, but also to up the ante and then take that day throughout the year and be activated. And so the question is, who made my clothes, and just to be aware of that. And so it's just so exciting to see consumers driving this and demanding that the people that are making our clothes are not exploited with slave labor and poor working conditions, with child labor. I mean, fair trade is very important in this movement, because you've got garment workers that are working over 100 hours a week of overtime and still only being paid $36 a month, right? So you've got brands and many retailers still making their margins at the expense of people around the world who can't even put food on the table, but are making the garments for the big retailers that are here in America, that the products that we think, great, fast fashion, yay, I can buy a new outfit every week for the next 52 weeks, right? But we got to change our thinking. That's not okay. In developing countries, an estimated 168 million children ages 5 to 14 are forced to work, often in apparel factories. I mean, it's not cool, right? And only 2% of apparel is made in the U.S., so that's why I'm really pushing to bring manufacturing back to the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, at a time where obviously we're concerned about jobs. Obviously, the other part is we would like our, our clothing and our textiles to cost less. We would like to clean up our environment. We would like to, we want more organic. The demand for organic food, as you mentioned, goes back to the demand for, we need to be able to have organic soil. We need to be able, as a result, to, the more land that we can transition from not organic cotton to organic cotton. And I think about, as you were talking about Fashion Revolution Day, my mom has shared the story with me of, we lost relatives decades ago, I think it's centuries ago actually, in the Triangle Fire, and remembering what we, how industrialization happened in this country, and when we first had people, locked in rooms who were not in appropriate working conditions, and accidents do happen, fires happen, other things, chemical reactions happen, et cetera. And so, as we went through that as a country, and as a result had increased our, created labor laws and fairer wages and things like that we're still working towards, I think that we have a real responsibility as we source and want the products that are the production of labor in other countries, to make sure that we're sharing that and being part of prevention of those to the best of our abilities. So as you were sharing that, I had this thought of like, gosh, it's kind of how we can share the knowledge of the 1920s in the United States with countries today, and make sure that they can more quickly and more healthfully adapt to fair wages, fair practices, from a work standpoint. So, all right, let's move from that to, definitely there's a ton of coverage. We are beyond thrilled with everything that we're seeing. And I think, one of the things that I continue to come back with Under the Canopy, with MetaWear, with what you're talking about from an eco-fashion standpoint, it's what I talk about with Better Beauty, or I talk about Better Nutrition, is this cannot be a compromise. Better nutrition cannot be a compromise on taste. Better beauty cannot be a compromise on it working and it looking and feeling good, and the same thing with fashion. And to me, that's the real takeaway, is we are at that point. So these things are good looking. The other part that I want to remind everyone, Marci has mentioned that we've got, availability of everything from, Bed Bath & Beyond, Under the Canopy being available there. Macy's, you were mentioning a launch in October, so we're really excited to see, and especially with back to school and back to college, that part of it. And I think that there's so much in that, that what I want to do for a moment is take a deep breath and say to people, number one, I already see that we've got 3 questions, so Matt, we'll get to those, but also if you have additional questions, if you are curious about where to start, I want to remind you about what I talk about when when somebody says to me, you know, what should I eat organic? And even that feels overwhelming. Come back to what are the things that you do most often. So most of us have the privilege and the good fortune to be able to get into a bed with sheets and pillowcases every evening. Most of us, again, have the privilege of being able to put clothing on our bodies and clothing on our kids' bodies. You know, your kids, their t-shirts, you know, we all know that they have favorite t-shirts and shorts that they're wearing, or socks that they're wearing all the time. And I think that that's really the place that you want to start. And, you know, this doesn't have to be like, okay, is my daughter's prom dress going to be made from, you know, sustainable or eco fashion? However, one of the very fashionable ideas, and this would be a whole other webinar with Marci, would be talking about borrowing and, you know, thrift and you know, how much do we actually consume. But, you know, that is also an opportunity, you know, in the reuse and not purchasing as much. But Matt, I think what we'll do right now is from that, say that first of all, we have Marci's information, and I'll come back to that because I'm realizing it's not on this slide, but to make sure that you can contact her, you can follow her across social media, get to know the brands under the canopy, Bed Bath & Beyond, Macy's. There's product, go into Whole Foods and shop with MetaWear. Start to look for the GOTS certification. We'll be seeing that everywhere. I know I will continue to showcase it on my social media as well. And let's dive into the questions that we do have.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Marci. So the first question, if you don't see GOTS, G-O-T-S on a label, how can you know if a fabric is okay for you?
That's a great one.
Yeah, so you know, at this juncture, because the industry is still, you know, a young industry and we're making huge strides every day, if a product is claiming to be organic, first of all, it better say certified organic. Otherwise, right now, you got to just be aware, right, that if it doesn't say certified organic, that's a red flag. If it is certified organic, now you can also look at the Textile Exchange does do an organic content standard where they're just certifying and validating the cotton itself. But just be aware that that doesn't necessarily mean if it's not GOTS that it isn't then processed with formaldehyde and other heavy chemicals or regular dyes, right? So GOTS gives you that assurance that it's also low impact dyes and finishes, not just the fiber itself. So what I would do in the case of what you asked is get to know the brand. Go study the brand that's making the claims of the product that you might want to buy and see if it's in their DNA and the language they're speaking on their site. If it's one product, you know, in a little mini capsule, you know, you might want to dive even deeper. If it's the brand's voice and it's who they are in the world, it's their DNA, then that obviously would be a little bit more trustworthy. And so, look, over time, hopefully we'll see a lot more GOTS in the market, but there's probably a little bit more homework that needs to get done at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Next question. I think we just have time for one more question. I want to be sensitive of everyone's time. So here it is. Are there different washing or cleaning needs for organic fibers?
Okay.
Great question. And it's not just organic fibers. So I would say how you clean your products, this is where you can really be empowered as a consumer. It's so important. So first and foremost, only use eco-friendly cleaning products, like earth-friendly products is a great line. 7th generation, you know, and for babies, I mean, Method has, you know, cleaning products, as does Honest, you know, but really be mindful about, you know, using the cleaning brands and products that are free also of the harmful chemicals. Secondly, you know, it's a myth that you have to wash in hot water. Wash in cold water, wash in at the very least warm water, but predominantly cold water. You know, you're still going to get your products, your garments, and your bedding clean, and yet you're going to use a lot less energy. And then anywhere that you can, try to line dry to also reduce the impact of energy. And you know, and again in the washing, of course, reducing water use. but you don't have to wash product as much as people think as well. We've sort of been programmed to do a lot more laundry, and wear smart. Just like buy less, slow down fashion, we also have to wash less and take responsibility there as best as we can.
Well, thank you, Marci. Anything to add, Ashley?
Yeah, that it saves you money. So I dry clean like now maybe two things. I love, like people laugh, I love washing my clothes. And I have found a combination. I don't know what you think about this, Marci, but I use Dr. Bronner's and Laundress, just a little bit of vinegar with my Dr. Bronner's. It saves the colors. I create in my sink and I wash it in there. And I have found the longevity of my clothes. And the other part is that the actual smells that, sometimes you send things to the dry cleaner or you throw them through a hot wash even, and the smells are not coming out. And I find when I hand wash it that way that the smells come out, but the material quality stays. So for me, it's been game changer. So, but the main thing is it has saved me so much money. And I know people say, but okay, that's fine, Ashley, you have time for that, or you have people that do that for you. So first of all, I don't have people that do it for me. I may have time for it. I'm not cleaning for a whole household. However, what I do is I do it in bulks. Like I'll soak it overnight before I go to bed, and when I wake up and I'm brushing my teeth, I wring it out and do it that way. And I have actually looked at the time that I do for that versus the time that I would be sending it out to dry cleaning, or the time that it would take to sort it, put it in the washer, move from washer to dryer, etc. And I got to tell you, I think the other resurgence we got to bring back is hand washing. It's so efficient. So I love that piece, and big shout out. So I'm really glad you ever asked that question. Marci, thank you for spearheading what is such an incredible change that we need to see, and that is going to contribute to all of our better health. So it's a real pleasure. And again, I can't stress enough, please, for everyone, continue to follow Marci. And if you have any questions, or if you have trouble getting to her, go ahead and send those questions through to me, and we will make sure that we get those answered from her. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was a very thought-provoking webinar. If people have any other questions, this will be promoted on Facebook next week. So please put your questions into the comments, and Ashley and Marci will happily answer them for you. And please join us for our next webinar next month, October the 26th at 1 p.m. EST. Better Sports Nutrition Simplified, because better nutrition enables better performance. Once again, thank you, Marci, and we will see you all next month.